It's for a good reason. The reason why I brought it up is because I want to talk to you all that I will be uploading a video later this week, making, just a whole video talking about free agency as a whole. I feel like with all the stuff that did happen, it deserved its own video than a quick little segment. Oh, Katniss, you and your silly I Declare tribute shenanigans. Oh, hey, fancy seeing you here. Yeah, what are you doing here? I made a video like 4 days ago. I think it's like episode 3 of Big Basketball News. Did you not go? What? Oh, you already saw the video? You're waiting for another video. What video? There's really nothing else to make. It's the NBA off season. Not really much to really talk about. I mean, I am reading this cool book, called The Hunger Games. It's actually a pretty. Oh, you don't care. Okay, my bad. My bad. Oh, you're the free agency video. I I I didn't really do anything to it. Are you sure you still want to see that video? Like, I know I told you in the that episode that I was gonna maybe make a video on it, but I don't know if I really want to make one. But I mean, you are here now. You're here. You somehow got in my house. I don't know how you got in my house, but since you're here, I might as well make the video. So, well, obviously you already know, but before we get into the video, let's hear that intro. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another What's Next on Basketball YouTube video. I am your host, as always, Jeremy, and we are back with another video. And this time we'll be talking about NBA free agency. So, as of recording, the free agency is basically over. There's not really any more top stars or players that we're really waiting for. I think there's actually a time when it's technically, over for free agency, and then the rest of the guys are just free agents, and then if the team wants them, they'll sign them. But at this point, we basically know all the top stars and where they're going, at least the important ones. So in today's video, I was trying to figure out, again, I had told you guys that I was going to make a free agency video because I felt like it deserved its own video for just more in depth of me just talking about each guy and saying why this was a good idea they signed here, why it was a bad idea, why it was a good idea for the team to sign them, why it was a bad idea for the team to sign them, the basic stuff. So, how this is going to work is, again, I'm just going to go over the top players that I feel like were big moves for a team, or at least were important to know where they went. So when it comes to like small guys that you were like, oh, this is kind of cool that we got so and so on the team, he's a good shooter for the bench or whatever. Unfortunately, unfortunately for you guys, I'm not gonna talk about that player if I don't feel like they're important. Now, if there's a player that you feel like is important that I should have talked about, by all means, go down in the comments, let me know about it, and you can either complain that I didn't talk about it, or you can let other people know in the comments like, hey, this is a guy you guys should look at too. For anyone that is interested in watching next season, he seems like he'll be a good player for so and so team. So yeah, that's kind of how it's gonna go. I have a list on my phone here for, honestly, probably for the next part of this video, you're just gonna see. I'm gonna do like editing for the rest of this, so you'll see like I'll have the player, his name. I'll probably put like what were their stats last season, just to kind of give it a good idea of who this player is and what this could mean for the team getting him. But overall, yeah, that's kind of what's gonna be. So the rest of this video, you're probably not gonna see my face unless I have something important to say, which is usually not at all any time. I'm usually just yapping for most of my videos. But at yeah, that's all I gotta really say. So again, before we start, make sure to like this video, comment down below if you have anything you want to say, make sure to share this video, and of course, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. A little while ago, we reached 400 subscribers, which I really thank you all for. It was a huge honor to finally get 400. Again, our next milestone is to reach 500 before September. So hopefully you guys can help me with that and maybe make it happen. I'm not sure if it will happen. I'm not sure if it will. But again, the important goal is our year-end goal. The important goal is our year-end goal, which is to get at least 1,000 subscribers, which I think we can do. So for now, that's all I really got to say. And now let's actually move on to the video. Alright, so the first guy we'll start on here is Patrick Williams. So just to let you guys all know, the way I went about this is I started off with the people that got signed first. So we're starting with players that got signed on June 30th, and we'll make all the way to probably like July 13th, which was, in my opinion, the last important guy to get signed. So yeah, that's kind of how it goes. That's how I did it here. So the first guy we'll talk about is Patrick Williams. Patrick Williams re-signed with the Chicago Bulls for a 5-year, $90 million contract. This was a no-brainer. The Chicago Bulls are currently on a rebuild, and they just had DeMar DeRozan leave. It seems like they're going to try to trade Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic, who I believe is still on the team. So just makes sense to try to keep most of their young guys. That will help with this rebuild that they're going on. So Patrick Williams, who I still think could be a very good player in this league. I don't know if he can be superstar or even just a star potential. I think the highest he might get is like all-star, but I still see potential in him. So it just made sense to re-sign him. The next guy was Obi Toppin, another guy that was just a no-brainer for the Indiana Pacers to keep back. The Pacers would sign him for a 4-year, $60 million deal, which is very, very good for Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin, as we all know, and myself, he was drafted to the New York Knicks, and I was very, very high on Obi Toppin. If you see in a lot of my videos, I have his jersey in the background, and it really sucked that he wasn't able to stay with the team, but he wasn't really doing much with us either, so it just made sense for him to go to a team where he could actually be useful. And that's what happened with the Pacers, where he ended up being actually a pretty big piece for them, especially throughout the season, and in some parts he was very important for them in the playoffs. So it just made sense that the Pacers were going to reward him by giving him a pretty big contract, at least for someone at his level. The next guy on here is James Harden, which in my opinion was like the big signing as of that time, because again, it was a pretty slow free agency. I think it took almost an hour or two until he really got a name where everyone was like, oh wow, I can't believe that. And I think that guy was honestly James Harden. The other two I thought were very important, just because again, I know they're not superstar guys, Patrick and Obi Toppin, but they're still pretty key pieces for the teams that I thought they were still worth mentioning. As for Harden, this was one that I don't think many people were shocked about. The Clippers, well, their goal was to try to keep all their players, since they were going to move to a new stadium so the fans would buy tickets. Now, as we know, that ended up not happening with a guy we're going to talk about later. But as for James Harden, again, it just made sense. You know, Harden, he is near the end of his career, so they only gave him 2 years, and they gave him 70 million, which even 70 million, in my opinion, I thought was a little much for someone like Harden, especially the way he's been playing. But hey, they're going to keep him. Hopefully Harden can help this team win, because I don't really know what the future holds for the Clippers, which I do plan on making a video about that in the near future. But yeah, Harden got signed to a 2-year deal, so congrats to him. Next up is KCP. He signed a 3-year, $66 million contract to go to the Orlando Magic. Now, this one was one I was very, very shocked about. KCP, I think, is a very good defender in this league. He's not like, one of the top guys, but I do still believe he is a great defender. And to hear that the Nuggets just let him go, and honestly didn't, I mean, if it was this easy for the Magic to get him, I don't think the Nuggets really fought back. Or it could be that their salary cap could have been in the way of giving the contract that he really wanted. But either way, this was honestly a really bad decision by the Nuggets to not push harder in trying to get him, because KCP, again, I believe he's a good defender, and that was someone the Nuggets, I feel like, that really helped them in times when they really needed someone to defend. Overall, KCP is just a great piece to have on any team, especially if you're a team like the Orlando Magic that at this point, with how they're looking, are definitely looking like they're going to keep trying to become this playoff team and potentially contenders, whether it's this season or in the near future. The Orlando Magic have a lot of great players in Paulo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs has been a great piece for them, and adding KCP just makes them even better. So that was a great signing by the Orlando Magic. Next up is Chris Paul, which Chris Paul would end up getting waived by the Warriors because apparently, if the rumors were true, it seemed like the Warriors were going to try to use Chris Paul and get in Paul George, but that obviously didn't end up happening. And then I think they tried to do it with Zach LaVine as well, and that also didn't happen. So the Warriors just decided, all right, well, Chris Paul, you did great for us. You're a very respected player in the league. We like you and stuff, but we don't really want you on the team anymore. And they kind of just waived him. And the Spurs saw this and decided to give him a contract of 1 year for $11 million. Now, I'm a little bit concerned about this, on what this means for Paul's future, because one, he will be playing with Victor Wembanyama, which I think is such a big deal for this league. I feel like having someone like Chris Paul alongside Victor Wembanyama who can really learn from him, I think Chris Paul would be a great teacher for him. And since Victor Wembanyama plays like he's a point guard or shooting guard, this is going to be interesting to see how his development grows within his second year. Because I thought Victor Wembanyama was very, very good for his first year. One of the best rookie years we've ever seen in NBA history. And arguably, he could have won both Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year. But again, Rudy Gobert got that. And it is what it is. Victor will end up winning more in his future. But what I'm getting at is that's going to be really cool to see how he does alongside Victor. Another thing is that if I wonder, this means this might be Chris Paul's last year. With him only having a 1 year contract, I don't know if that means he's like, yeah, this is it. This is my farewell tour. After this, I'm hanging up the shoes. Or, Chris Paul just really didn't want to be in San Antonio for as long as, you know, as long as possible. So he might just do the 1 year and maybe go on to another team. But who knows? If the Spurs end up doing really good this year, Paul might want to come back, especially again. I think Victor is going to be the next top guy. So it just makes sense to stay with him because this might be Chris Paul's chance in getting a ring. Yeah, it's not going to be this year, but give it like another year or two, Paul. Just stay a little bit longer and you might finally get that ring. But let's move on to the next guy, which is Jonas Valanciunas. Honestly, I was shocked that more teams weren't going after Jonas because I feel like he's a very good center, a very good backup center, and it just was surprising to me that the team that ended up getting him was the Washington Wizards. Yeah, it really didn't make much sense for the Wizards to sign him because the Wizards are another team that is 100% on a rebuild, and I don't really know what the idea was behind this. I believe, let me check for you guys right now. I think the Wizards were the ones that drafted Alex Sarr, so maybe they just wanted to make sure they had a good backup behind Sarr that could help with his development throughout the years. Because again, they signed Jonas Valanciunas for 3 years, 30 million. So maybe that's the idea there. Again, we'll look at the roster here just to see. Yeah, they did get Alex Sarr, who was someone that people said will end up being pretty good. Again, I know this year's draft wasn't really very looked at as a good draft by a lot of people, but I think Sarr does seem like he can be someone that can be good in this league. So maybe that was kind of the idea, is to have a good backup for Sarr. But again, I don't really know what the plan or what the main idea was for signing Valanciunas. Because again, I really think he would have been good on a contending team. So I was really shocked that not many more contending teams were trying to push more towards getting him. But yeah, that's kind of what it was for June 30th when it came to the sign-in. So let's move on to July 1st. Moving on here to July 1st, we will start off with Derrick Jones Jr. Now, this one was one I was very shocked about when it came to free agency because I really thought Derrick Jones Jr. was going to stay with the Dallas Mavericks, but that ended up not actually happening. Derrick Jones Jr. would actually go on to sign a 3-year, $30 million contract with the Los Angeles Clippers. I thought this was a great idea from the Clippers. Again, you need to try to get as many good players as possible on this team because at this point, with all the picks you traded, when you ended up not getting a guy that we're about to talk about very, very soon, it didn't really seem uh, awesome being a Los Angeles Clippers player and a fan. So they're like, man, we need to find a player that we know fans might be interested in. And Derrick Jones Jr., I feel like was a player that definitely started getting a lot of attention towards him, especially since the Dallas Mavericks made it all the way to the playoffs and people thought he was a very key player for them making it that far. So Jones definitely deserved all the money he got. I think he's a very good player and a very good piece for the Clippers to hopefully maybe make them contenders. Again, you guys know how I feel personally about the Clippers, but not looking at it in a biased and personal way, this is definitely a good piece to have for the Clippers. I was honestly shocked that the Mavericks somehow lost him. This was a big loss on the Mavericks, a huge L on the Mavericks. I can't even believe you somehow let him go. This was just disappointing to see. The next guy was Kelly Oubre Jr., who signed a 2-year, $16.3 million contract to stay at the 76ers. Not much to say here. It doesn't really seem that shocking for Kelly Oubre to stay. I think he was doing great with the Philadelphia, so I'm just happy to see he's decided to stay with them and help Joel Embiid because, again, Joel Embiid is going to need a lot of help, especially with how that bench is looking. I mean, we know how the starters are looking because of this man right here, which was Paul George would sign a 4-year, $212 million contract to go to the 76ers. This, even looking at the other guys I'm about to talk about, this hands down was the craziest contract signing this year for free agency. I don't think anyone, and I mean anyone, thought that Paul George was gonna leave the Clippers, especially leave the Clippers to go to Philadelphia. Now, hearing the stories and stuff, again, I will make a video on Paul George and how much of a failure this was for the Clippers losing him. I think I'm also going to make a video about the Philadelphia 76ers and what this means for getting Paul George. But first, let's just talk about Paul George and the Clippers right now in this video. First, this is a incredible loss when it comes to the Los Angeles Clippers because I just don't know how you lose him. How on earth do you lose arguably your best player on the team? Besides, I know we have our comments when it comes to Kawhi and Paul George and who's really the best guy. In my opinion, I think Paul George might have a good points, arguably could be considered the best guy on the team. Now, yes, Kawhi Leonard's a great defender. He's won 2 championships. He's great when he's on the court, but that's the problem. He's great when he's on the court. When it comes to that run that the Clippers had with Kawhi and Paul George as their dynamic duo, Paul George was the main guy for most of it. I think there was only once where Paul George ended up getting injured in the playoffs, so they didn't have both guys. But for that whole run that they had, which was like 5 or 6 years, Paul George was the one carrying this team. And the problem is, at least hearing Paul George talk, I'm not going to say this is exactly what he's saying, so take what I say with a grain of salt. This is not what he's saying. I'm not quoting him at all. I'm just saying from what I've seen from him, from talking and how he plays, Paul George does not want to be the number one guy on a team, which was why Paul George had such a problem with Kawhi always being hurt and why he really just didn't want to probably stay there most likely. Again, this is just me theorizing. I don't know the actual reason behind it. And just hearing from him talking his podcast, that's what it really seems like. And going on a team like the 76ers, you have Joel Embiid, who's the number one guy, and you also have Tyrese Maxey, which arguably I would say is going to be the number 2. And then you got Paul George. So if Joel Embiid ends up slacking, we got Tyrese that can help, and then Paul George would be the guy that gets the little pieces around there that Joel and Tyrese don't see. And again, when it comes to those 3, this is for sure a big three. I don't care what anybody says that they're like, oh, this isn't a big three. Why does everyone always keep using that word? This is a big three. Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George. Again, I have my opinions on Joel Embiid. I don't know if he's as great in the playoffs as people try to hype him up to be, but when it comes to him in the regular season, he's very, very good and arguably would have won the MVP for 2 years in a row if he didn't get injured. And I think this is the best team Embiid's had since Jimmy Butler was on the team. Arguably is the best team he's ever had. Again, we have to look at see what the bench is, because that is, I feel like, a key ingredient, we'll say, when it comes to a championship team. Because again, they're a big three. They're going to do great. But when they're down and they're not doing good, we need those other players that can step up and can just help with those small little problems that the superstars really can't focus on. You know, you have the bench players that focus on that. We need our role players, our good role players, to say the least. But yeah, I have no idea how Paul was somehow able to leave. It was like, even talking now about it, even trying to tell you guys that are watching right now what my thought process was when I heard Paul George got signed. And again, of course, like Paul George always does, it was like early in the morning when this news came out. And when I did read it, my first thought was just I simply just looked at my phone and said, oh my. Because not because of the 76ers just got a really good star. I think Paul George is still pretty good. And I know like there's a lot of teams that were interested, especially my Knicks. But the problem was, which is what the 76ers did, was I didn't want to give him that big contract. I didn't think Paul George, for his age and him getting older, he seems like one of those players that unfortunately is just going to get hurt with more injuries. And I just didn't think he was worth signing over 200 whatever. But of course, the Knicks would end up doing that to OG. So I guess it is what it is there. But OG is younger and I think a better defender than Paul George. So there's that argument. But again, this isn't about the Knicks. I'm over here rambling on. Back to Paul George. It I don't know. Again, I just, it wasn't the 76ers that I said oh my to. It was the Clippers. Because I don't understand how you let Paul George walk for nothing. For nothing. And everybody knows what that trade looked like way back when the Clippers traded for Paul George. You gave up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who ended up being a superstar. Again, at that time, we didn't know he was going to be as great, but I still have to consider it as a loss, especially with what Shai is looking like now. You traded all your picks away. I think the next pick the Clippers have that will end up being somewhat good is like in 2030. You have nothing. He walked for nothing. And when it came to this run that they did, what did they get out of it? I think like one conference finals appearance. They never made it to the NBA finals. They didn't win a chip together. They didn't win a conference finals championship together. This was a complete failure. When it comes to winning a championship, it was a failure. Business wise, it was great. You know, they had fans in their seats. They got money. I know the Clippers like the richest owner. I don't know if it's just basketball or in sports history, but he's one of the richest sports owners out there. So business wise, it was a huge success. But basketball wise, this sucked. Like, in all honesty, this was a complete failure. I don't know how the Clippers are going to recover from this. You guys know how I feel about the Clippers. I think they're a laughing stock. I think they're the biggest losers in NBA history, and they just keep showing it time and time again. So, again, this was really embarrassing, and that's all I really got to say. Let's move on to the next guy, which is Paul George's new partner, and that's Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey re-signed with the 76ers, getting a 5-year, $204 million contract. This was a no-brainer. Maxey has done incredible this season, last season. I think he 100% deserved this contract, and he's going to be a great star in the near future, and arguably is probably a top 5 point guard in the league even right now. He's just great to watch. Someone that got to see him in person, I can tell you for a fact that Maxey is everything that the 76ers say. That he shows. He deserves all the money he gets. He's such a great player, and I just love watching him play. Something I didn't love watching on my phone was seeing that ESPN would announce that Isaiah Hartenstein would sign a 3-year, $87 million contract to go not to the back to the Knicks. That didn't happen, unfortunately. He would go to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, the Thunder just didn't need any more great players, like they don't already have great players. And the Thunder obviously have shown, yeah, this upcoming season, we're not messing around anymore. We're going after a championship. And getting Isaiah Hartenstein, I think, was another great piece to have. Isaiah Hartenstein, I've told you guys all the time how great he is, and I really hoped he came back, but unfortunately that didn't happen, which I did expect as well, because with that contract we gave to OG Anunoby, I expected we were not going to have the money necessary to re-sign Isaiah Hartenstein. But I'm very happy to see Isaiah Hartenstein getting the money he deserves. I was really hoping he took a pay cut, but hey, it is what it is. Isaiah Hartenstein got the money he deserves, and now he's going to be on a team, which, again, the Knicks do look like another team that could win a championship, but OKC looks like a for sure team that is most likely going to have high odds when it comes to winning the championship next season. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a Thunder versus Knicks series this upcoming season for the 2025 NBA championship, but only time will tell. Next up, we have a very important guy, which is Tobias Harris. He signed. He signed. I'm just kidding. Who cares about Tobias Harris? Anyways, next up is the Celtics. Celtics would re-sign Derek White for a 4-year, $125.9 million contract. This was another no-brainer. Derek White, great player. He played great for the Celtics. He was a big part of how they won a championship. So it just makes sense for the Celtics to bring back majority of their guys since, well, it worked. Derek White deserves all the money he got, and hopefully he doesn't try to regrow his hair, because we've seen the stats. Derek White with hair and without hair. So hopefully he keeps that hair, man. And hopefully he can get new teeth, man. I really hope he was okay. And I'm sure his dentist was looking at him like, bro, what did you do? And yeah, awesome player, great player. Happy to see him get the money he deserves. Next up was another shocking move when it came to free agency. One that was in talks and people were talking about might happen, but we didn't know if it would happen or not. And that was Klay Thompson. So the Warriors and Klay Thompson weren't able to come to an agreement when it came to how much money he was making. And I guess there was other news that he didn't want a bigger role. He didn't want to get a 6-man role or a bench role. So because of that, the Warriors and Klay were not able to come into agreements, which then brought the news that Klay Thompson would be joining the Dallas Mavericks with a 3-year, $50 million contract. Now, for those of you that don't know, Klay Thompson went 0 for 10 in an elimination game. And also, I think, honestly, even though with that joke always being around in every single comment on an Instagram post, I think this is a great move for the Dallas Mavericks. Klay Thompson is a good shooter. Again, I know it didn't show in his last performance in the Warriors jersey, but I swear Klay Thompson is actually a really good player. And I assume he won't have a big role to play. Like, obviously he'll be like a starter, I'm sure, for the Dallas Mavericks, but I don't think he'll be the number one guy. He will be a nice guy to have for Luka to pass to, and he knows for sure Thompson, for the most part, will end up making the shots. It just seems like a good piece for the Mavericks to get. It seemed like a good decision. It sucked that the Warriors aren't going to have these Splash Brothers anymore. It really was an end of an era. The Warriors dynasty honestly has officially ended. The main guys were Klay, Steph, and Dre. Those were the guys I looked at when it came to this dynasty they built. And I do have an idea in mind that I had asked you guys months ago that is still in the works. And I now have to do a little bit more adding to it now that we know that Klay is gone. And I feel like this is officially the end of the dynasty. And yeah, it was disappointing, man. Watching those guys just absolutely demolished throughout my young years of the NBA. Seeing how great they were doing. Again, I wasn't a super big NBA fan like I am now back in the day, but I always did watch the NBA Finals, and the guys I would see was the Warriors. Klay, Draymond, Steph, of course KD when he was with them for a bit. And Yeah, just it's sad, man. I know like there was reports that Clay and Steph had a phone call after him getting signed, or I think it was before he ended up signing with the Mavericks. Just saying like, "Hey, I'm not coming back to the team." Apparently, it was really emotional, and it really sucks. But I'm one thing I always tell people all the time is this. Well, I feel like players going onto a new team after not having a great year have the potential to just really regenerate their career and make it amazing. So who knows? Maybe this will be a good decision. This will end up being something great, a great decision that Klay Thompson made when it came to switching to another team. And I'm very excited to see how that will work with Luca, Kyrie, and Thompson all on the same team. But yeah, that's all I really got to say on that. And the last guy to sign on July 1st was Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum would sign a 5-year, $314 million contract, which now solidifies him as having the biggest contract in NBA history. Now, as you guys know, I did say I feel like Jason Tatum was going to get the biggest contract in NBA history, but that was not the number I did say. Exactly. I thought he was going to get 400 million. I really believe Jason Tatum could get 400 million for his new contract, which obviously didn't happen. He ended up getting 314, but still, he did get the biggest contract, which I was right about, so I'll take credit for that. But again, I don't think this shocked anybody. They just won a championship. I know Jason Tatum was the one that won Finals MVP, but he was the best player on the team. He's the main guy in the Celtics. He's the star guy. He's the main guy, and he's doing all these ads now, which he's always done, but he's been doing a lot more. He just got announced for the 2K cover. He's copying everybody with their slogans and quotes and everything, but we'll push that to the side, and for now just congratulate Tatum on getting this contract. He deserved it. Great player. And yeah, let's just move on to July 2nd. All right, so moving on here, these next couple days are going to be very, very short since, again, there wasn't any big signings that I thought were very big, so we're going to go through these pretty quickly. July 2nd, we had two big names. The first one being Donovan Mitchell. He signed a 3-year, $150.3 million extension to stay with the Cavs. This was honestly very shocking in my opinion because I really didn't think Donovan Mitchell was going to stay with the Cavs. I heard there was a lot of frustrations between the team as a whole, which is why they fired like their coach. I heard some rumors that Donovan and Darius Garland weren't getting along very well. Again, I'm sure players all the time never get along with their teammates here and there, but I really thought he was going to try and go to a different team. But he decided to sign his 3-year extension and stay with the Cavs. So yeah, hopefully the Cavaliers can start doing some big moves because I do think the team is very, very good. It's just like it's weird trying to have all these young players surrounded by Donovan Mitchell, who's a player that's playoff ready. He wants to win a championship, but he has to wait for these other guys to start growing a bit more and become good players. So that really sucks. But overall, yeah, congrats to the Cavs for keeping Donovan Mitchell. Next up is James Wiseman, and his contract would be who cares? I'm just kidding, guys. No one cares about James Wiseman. Let's move on to July 3rd. All right, so these next ones from July 3rd to the 13th, there's only like one or two people that I put on here. So we're just going to jumble them up into one. So you'll see, like, it's going to say July 3rd to the 13th. So we're just going to get through these fast. So the first one, LeBron James signed a 2-year, $104 million contract. Not a surprise at all. I don't think anyone was shocked about this because his son got drafted to the Los Angeles Lakers. So why on earth would this man leave the Lakers now and say, oh, actually, I'm going to take my talents somewhere else? Like, no, he's going to stay with the team. It made sense. Then we move forward to July 4th, where the Warriors would sign Buddy Hield in a sign-in trade with the contract being 2 years and 21 million. So, hey, we might not have the Splash Brothers anymore, but now we got the Splash Buddies. The Splash Buddies, everyone. That's going to be awesome, right, Steph? Steph? You there, buddy? Steph? You got Buddy Hield, or aren't you happy about that? July 5th, we would get Franz Wagner re-signing back with the Orlando Magic on a 5-year, $224 million contract. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't have re-signed him. I think Franz Wagner's a good player. Now, do I think he's worth 224 million? I don't think so. That's like a lot of money, but the Orlando Magic, I'm assuming, had a lot of money to give, so why not, right? Just give him his rookie max and move forward. July 6th, we would see DeMar DeRozan. He would go to the Kings in a sign-in trade and would get a 3-year, $74 million contract. This was also big news. I really love this move for the Sacramento Kings because the Sacramento Kings are a team where they are a playoff team, but they really don't have like one or two pieces to really move them up to that next level where they could win the NBA championship. Now, with getting DeMar DeRozan, I think they are closer to winning the championship now, having a great veteran like that. But I think they need at least like one more piece to really solidify the Kings as a team to take seriously next season. Now, who is that player I think should it be? I have no idea. But I do like this move. Having DeMar, Darian Fox, and Sabonis together, I think is going to be a great, uh, not dynamic duo. It would be, it's just going to be a great, what's the word? It's going to be a great trio to have with each other on the Kings. And I'm very excited to see what the Kings will do next season. The second last guy I'll talk about is Cade Cunningham. He signed a 5-year, $224 million contract to stay with the Detroit Pistons. This just made sense on Cade Cunningham's part. Now, I am actually surprised he wanted to stay with Detroit because of how horrible they were. I don't know what insane person would want to sign with Detroit and stay with them, but it just made sense because he had his rookie max that was coming up, and why leave to another team? Just sign the contract and figure it out later is what I would say. And obviously that was the same mindset Cade had. He's just like, listen, man, I'm just gonna sign the contract, get my 224 million, and then if I want to leave, I'll tell them I want to leave. If I don't want to leave, hey, I'm getting paid over $200 million, so that it's a win-win. And lastly, the most important one of all time, the most important player to sign of a team was on July 13th, where the Charlotte Hornets would sign Taj Gibson to a 1-year, $3.3 million contract. Guys, I hate to break the news to you. I hate to be the one to spoil it, but the Hornets just won. The Hornets, they're winning the championship next season. LaMelo Ball's holding that trophy. Brandon Miller's going to hold that trophy. Miles Bridges is going to actually, be able to not do heinous crimes anymore and be happy that he's a champion. It's over, guys. Hornets are winning it all. They're the 2025 NBA champs. It's over.